Yep, we will definitely record it. Josh, do you want me to go ahead? Do you want to wait a couple more minutes to see if anybody else joins, or go ahead and get started? I mean, obviously, I'll be looking to let people in as we go, but if I'm showing, let's see, can you see the list of people who's on, Josh?
I think we're good. I know we have some that they're finishing up right. I'll just send them the recorded.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, so welcome everybody. Feel free throughout this, I guess kind of a presentation to throw questions into the chat box, or you can ask questions over your microphone. Feel free to turn on video, or if or any of that kind of stuff. When I was talking to Josh, I guess last week or maybe the week before, talked about if I had any ideas that might help you guys as a team with your hitting, and your hitting, particularly in games and that kind of stuff. And so I have this little kind of presentation that I like to do with teams from time to time. It really just talks about what I think are some good approaches in games to be better at making adjustments and better at game planning and that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to share these slides with you, talk a little bit about them, and then open it up for some questions. I also shared these slides in the chat box, so you guys are welcome to download them and have them. If there's some things on here that that you guys like and want to continue to work on. So with that being said, let me share the screen. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm making an assumption that everybody can see this. Everybody can hear me. If that's not the situation, then somebody try to stop me and let me know. I'll try to check from time to time, if people are trying to get in, get them in. But in any event, so we're talking about adjustments at the plate, and I want to share some big picture stuff real quick. Everybody hang on just one second.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too.
Give me 1 second here, guys. I need to do something real quick. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I want to talk about some big picture stuff, and these are 7 principles that I think are really important if you're going to maximize and be the best hitter that you can be. I think a lot of times as players, parents, coaches, we focus a lot on the mechanical elements of a swing, which are super important. But I think there are things that are more important, or at least equally as important. So I want to share a couple of these things real quick. I think being a great hitter in a game starts with decision making. And I think decision making is a place of which you guys as hitters do exert some control. So you do have control over your decision making. It doesn't mean that the decision making is an easy thing to do. It just means you do have control. So I think it's a really important part of your hitting to work on, because you do have a control element to it. And then moving to timing, I think timing, being able to time up balls is one of those things that some people are just better at than others, but it's a critical part of hitting. Typically, timing is what affects whether somebody's swing looks good in a live situation. Timing kind of affects the quality of the outcome. So timing is a huge part of being successful in games. And then I think the adjustments, which we're going to focus a lot on tonight, are huge, right? You have to be able to have some awareness of what's going on and figure out what adjustments might be necessary. I think that confidence is big. You know, you need to be a confident player. Confidence at the plate is important. I think confidence primarily comes from two places. It comes from result-oriented outcomes. So your confidence or lack of confidence can come from your success at the plate. And it can come from external sources like your coaches, your peers, your parents. You know, your confidence can be either boosted or taken away sometimes by external forces. So it's important to understand that, but also it's important to understand that confidence can be built internally from work ethic. So if you're prepared and you've been working hard, that can build your confidence. So confidence, self-confidence comes from external sources and internal. Internally, it comes from your work ethic and your preparation. Externally, it comes from results and the people around you. But regardless, both of those are big parts of confidence. So you have to be aware of them and work to build your confidence as a hitter if you're going to maximize your results. Number 5 on my list, this isn't necessarily in order of importance, maybe a little bit, but not, you know, it changes from time to time, even for me. I might move these around a little bit. You know, for an example, work ethic could be maybe at the very top, but mechanics are important. The way that I like to think about mechanics, ladies, and parents, coaches, is mechanics either add or remove barriers to how easy or difficult hitting might be. So for an example, if you have very good hitting mechanics, then you remove barriers to be on time. You remove barriers to make adjustments. If you have a lot of holes in your mechanics, then you add barriers. But that doesn't mean that you can't overcome those barriers. It just means it's going to be more difficult. So if you truly had a really rough swing, you could still be a good hitter, but you would have some barriers that you would have to overcome. So working on your mechanics is super important. Number 6 on my list is just your ability to be a self-coach, awareness of your process. I like to tell hitters that you want to be your own best coach because you're going to be involved in every swing that you make in your lifetime. You're not always going to have the same coach there. You're not always going to have the same hitting coach. You're not always going to have a parent there with you when you hit. So it's important that you have an awareness of who you are as a hitter so that you can be a good self-coach. And then finally in this list is work ethic. I mean, work ethic is going to correlate to what your ceiling is. The harder you work, the higher your ceiling is going to be. So just want to kind of get the big picture stuff out of the way before we got into some of the nitty gritty of making adjustments. Josh, do you have anything that you want to add or any questions that you might have about just this first slide? Or maybe even sharing some things that you see with your team that you feel y'all could do better?
You know, just on your list there alone, I mean, we kind of talked about it. We struggle with making in-plate adjustments, whether it be, you know, I think we have questions in terms of what a two-strike approach should be in terms of my swing pattern. Should I be going like a wide no stride or choking up? And at the same time too, as we kind of get to different pitching levels now, you know, faster pitchers and of course with spin, making adjustments with our timing and figure out that timing.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we're definitely going to touch on exactly those things. So let me move to this slide. So when I think about adjustments at the plate, ladies, what I think about is you have a whole group of different kinds of adjustments. You have season to season adjustments, right? So you have, think about the hitter you've been last season, whether you're, you know, whether you struggled, whether you were great, you know, whatever that may be, what is the adjustment you want to make to the next season? And season to season is, you know, a place where you can make adjustments, especially mechanically. That's kind of where I think you can make a lot of adjustments if you want, if you're interested in making mechanical adjustments. Season to season is a great place to do that. You have month to month adjustments, you know, that's more how you're trending within a season. You know, you have tournament to tournament, meaning, you know, you hit great one tournament and then you don't hit great another tournament. And sometimes that's kind of an odd concept. If you think about it, how can you be
I don't know, my
great
friend
one
told me.
tournament and kind of stink it up another tournament? Like, what are the variables that change that do that? It's not mechanical, right? Because nobody's swing changes mechanically from tournament to tournament. So it's something in the mental process that changes from one tournament to the next, and why you might be super successful and then not so successful and kind of go on this roller coaster ride of success. And then you have game to game adjustments. So within a tournament, you know, what kind of success or failure are you having and how you might adapt to that in the next game. And then you have at bat to a bat adjustments. So adjustments you would make against a certain pitcher. And then you have pitch to pitch adjustment, which is adjustments in the box in that moment. And I think that's going to be the one that we focus on the most in this presentation. But I just wanted to kind of throw out, there's lots of different adjustments at the plate that you can make depending on the environment that you're in. So
Thank you.
I'm going to briefly go through this one because I want to get to the more end game of stuff. But when you're making adjustments in your training, one thing I would say is, you know, understand the environment and what the goal is. I'll give you one that really drives me crazy, right? So if I'm working with a team and we're doing tee work, you know, I think every tee swing needs to have some kind of outcome oriented goal off of a tee. You should be working on something. And if you're not achieving whatever that goal is, you need to be making adjustments every single time until you start achieving what the goal is and you can make it repeatable. It drives me crazy to watch people hit off a tee and they just consistently are not getting the result they want without really making big changes. I think one of the things that I try to get hitters to focus on is a 3 swing rule or an opposite effect rule. So for an example, sometimes it just, when you're not getting the results you want, I think most hitters are typically trying to hit line drives unless there's a different goal in effect. But overall, we want to hit line drives as much of the time as we can. So if we're in a cage, let's just say front toss for an example. If we're hitting front toss, typically front toss is really slow.
It's being recorded.
I
think he's gonna send it out.
Carly, if that's you, you need to turn your mic off.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. So the 3 swing rule that I'm talking about. So let's say, for example, you're in the cage and you're working off front toss. Front toss is slow. So just by default, when you're hitting off front toss, I would always hit opposite field typically, or up the middle. I would try not to pull it because pulling front toss is typically very easy because the pitching is real slow. So with the 3 swing rule, here's where I'm going with this. Let's say your goal is line drives, okay? And the first pitch comes to you in front toss and you hit a pop fly, you hit it straight up, okay? Second pitch comes to you, you hit a pop fly. The third pitch comes to you, you hit another pop fly. If you haven't made an adjustment by 3 pitches, then you need to make an extreme adjustment, right? So what I mean by that is, if you keep hitting pop flies and your goal is to hit a line drive, then by the 3rd pitch, your mind should shift to be hitting hard ground balls, because that's the extreme adjustment to a pop fly is a ground ball. And we need to make an adjustment because we're not hitting line drives. So that's what I mean by the 3 swing rule is, don't repeat the same mistake more than 3 times. If you do, then you're not focused on the adjustments and you're not focused on being efficient with those adjustments. So that's kind of what I, like to tell my hitters to think about is, you have 3 swings to make your adjustment. Make sure you've done it by then, for whatever the goal is you're looking for. Mechanical adjustments, we're not going to get into the mechanical stuff tonight. But one thing I will tell you that I found that can really help hitters is understanding how to keep your hands high in your swing. Typically, adjustments are a lot more difficult when the hands start to work down early in the swing, because working up for last second adjustments and hitting is really difficult. Working down, not so much. So trying to keep your hands above the ball as high as you can is super important, I think, to being able to make adjustments. All right, so we're going to talk more specifically about the in-game stuff. I like to think of adjustments sometimes as easy versus hard, okay? Hard adjustments to me are things that you don't have as much control over, right? So one of the hardest adjustments I think you can make, and I think we're really guilty of this as players, parents, and coaches, is mechanical adjustments in the box in a game. Mechanical adjustments from a physics standpoint are almost impossible to make in a game. And that's because the mind is so occupied with everything that it has to process in order to hit a live pitcher that there's just not enough mind processing power to change mechanical movements. So we can holler all we want at somebody to keep their hands up or to not drop their hands or not pull their shoulder or, you know, not pull their head. We can screen that stuff till we're blue in the face, but as a hitter, you probably have no control over that in the box when you're in a game. So I try to stay away from mechanical adjustments and pitch to pitch for the most part because they're very difficult to make. Also, a hard adjustment is, you know, dealing with negative talk. If you have a lot of negative talk happening in your at-bats, you're making it very difficult to make good adjustments. Also, a hard adjustment is outcome oriented. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're in a struggle, you're really slumping, you're not doing well, and you tell yourself that, you know, I've got to get a hit this next time. I'm going to get a hit. I'm going to get a hit. Well, the problem with that type of mindset is you have no control over if you get a hit. Like, you absolutely do not. There are a lot of other elements that come into play to get a hit, and they have to do with the defense. They don't have to do with you. So if you're in a struggle, if you're in a kind of a negative place and your focus is to get a hit, you're really setting yourself up for some additional frustration because getting a hit is not in your control. However, you could flip that around. Instead of saying get a hit, you could say, I need to have a quality at bat or something like that. Something that you have a little bit more control over and you can measure. We'll get a little bit more into that later. An easy adjustment, I think, in a game, rather than mechanical thoughts, think about where you're lined up in the box and think about where you're trying to hit a ball. So for an example, if I told any one of you guys as hitters to hit a ground ball, your mind already kind of knows the adjustment to make. Your hand-eye coordination kind of adjusts itself without a lot of thought. You know how to hit a ground ball. You know you're going to have to get to the top of the ball to do that. So if I keep popping up or I'm lunging, rather than tell myself, don't lunge, you know, keep your head in or anything like that, I might just say, you know, hit a hard ground ball, because my mind knows what to do when hitting a ground ball. Now, it may not be able to do it because it's hard, but it knows what to do. It's a simple task is what I'm saying. Another one that I think is, you know, super easy adjustment is just where you're at in the box. So if your timing is off where you just keep fouling the ball off and you're late each time, then make an adjustment in the box so that maybe you don't have to change your swing, but just because you're in a different part of the box, your timing cleans up a little bit, right? So if you're super, super late, maybe you back up to the very back of the box and you don't necessarily have to change your swing. You just changed your position in the box in space and time, so that may give you what you need to get on time. That's an easy adjustment, right? Moving in the box, that's easy. Trying to aim at a different part of the ball, that's easy. It's not necessarily easy to execute, but it's easy to conceptualize for your brain. So think about the part of the ball that you're hitting, think about the part of the box that you're in, and then think about your process of what you're doing, putting your plans together, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and just what is your process as a hitter? Because those things, I think, are the adjustments that you have more control over and that are going to ultimately be less frustrating. This kind of my last thing here, and then I'll ask for some questions. I call these mind tricks. You know, Again, this kind of comes back to what I was saying a minute ago. If you keep popping the ball up, instead of saying stop dropping your hands or stop dropping your shoulder, because that's what your parents are saying or coach or whatever, then just tell yourself, hit a hard ground ball, get on top, hit it hard, get on top, hard ground ball, hard ground ball. Because ultimately, a hard ground ball means that you're going to make the right adjustment to not pop it up. Okay. So to me, that's a mind trick where you can flip something mentally to get a different result without it feeling like it's a negative or an uncontrollable outcome result. So another one might be if you're pulling everything, you know, if you keep pulling, you know, instead of thinking, okay, my hands got to stay back, I got to stay back, which is a great thought. You know, maybe you think, I need to hit a hard line drive over first base. Because if you do think about hitting the ball over first base, your hand-eye coordination is automatically going to adjust into a different process, right? You're automatically going to hit the ball a little bit later because your mind knows you're going to have to hit it later to go over first base. So now you might not pull it just by rethinking where you're trying to hit it. So that's kind of what I mean by change hard into easy and, you know, using little mind tricks to do that. So questions about this slide? Josh, can you think of anything on this one? Or does it make sense? Or is there anything that doesn't quite make sense?
I think the process outcome oriented bullet point is something pretty key for our girls. You know, I think, you know, walking on the plate and you know, having that conversation for a, you know, good at bat versus, you know, trying to knock out a double or whatever it may be. I think that's a big point for us. I make sure everyone makes sure they paid attention to that particular bullet point.
Okay, and we're going to actually expand that bullet point too. So we'll get to that. Next slide. You know, dealing with slumps and failure. I think, you know, I like to tell hitters this, you know, as a player, whether it's hitting, pitching, anything, but let's just take hitting. Everything is a roller coaster in this sport. You know, there's a lot of failure. There's a lot of success. It is an up and down process, right? It is up and down. There is no way, no matter how good you are, to avoid the down part of the roller coaster. There is just absolutely no way to not have that dip. That is going to happen to every player at every level. The difference is great players, elite players, their arc is different, right? So they stay up here longer and then they stay down here less and go right back up. An average player is going to be up, then down and stay down longer, then come back up, come back down, stay down longer. A player that's struggling is going to be up only for a minute and then be down for a long time. So everybody has that roller coaster arc. It's just where you're at defines kind of how much you're at the top of the roller coaster and how much you're at the bottom. So accepting the failure is super important. Understanding that it is completely okay to fail is a big part of being mentally strong in this game. Failure is a learning opportunity. It doesn't feel good, it sucks, but it's a place to learn and get better. And you have to embrace failure in order to get the most out of it. So when you talk about dealing with slumps, what I try to ask players to do is find the thing that they control the most and try to focus on that. I think a great strategy for trying to work out of a slump is measure your success with quality plate appearances. You know, define what a quality plate appearance is or a quality at bat is, and measure your success at the ability to have a quality at bat. Don't measure it with a batting average, not necessarily an on-base percentage. Measure it with a quality at bat. And I think that that will give you a true measure of kind of where you're at. I also think that one thing you can do to try to work out of a slump is to monitor your at-bats and have awareness of your at-bats. So what I mean by that is focus on your decision-making percentage. So let's say that you're coming up in an at-bat, and let's say you have 5 pitches to work with, and let's say you end up striking out. When you come back to the dugout you need to understand what happened on each of those 5 pitches. You first need to understand, did I make a good decision? You know, did I swing at a pitch out of the zone? That's a bad decision, 1 out of 5. Did I look at a third strike? That's not a good decision. That's 2 out of 5. In the middle, did I swing and foul off a ball? That's not a good decision. Maybe I swung and fouled a good pitch. That is a good decision, right? So have a sense of what your decision percentage is, because if you sit down in the dugout and you're like, I just had a really crappy at bat, and you made 4 out of 5 bad decisions, then there's your problem. Like, until you fix your decision making, you can't expect to have any kind of consistency to take you in the right direction. You have to get your decision making under control. You do that through your mental game. And once your decision making is solid, then you got to look to something else for why you're not being successful. But I just wanted to bring up that example. Sometimes you can measure success very simply by just saying, when I hit a ball, was it a good pitch to swing at? And did I hit it hard, even if I didn't get on? Sometimes you can keep it as simple as that to measure whether you feel like you had a good at-bat. But I would say kind of understanding your awareness of your at-bats, especially when you're struggling, to try to get a sense of control, because nothing's worse for a hitter when they're really struggling. They don't know what to do. There's no control. They're just like, what do? I don't know what to do. That's a terrible feeling. So try to grab some control back by monitoring your decision making. This is something that I've used in the past with teams. It's called my mental mechanics or funnel of focus. You guys can see this if you download these PDFs. I don't know if you can see it very well in the shared screen because it's kind of small, and we're not going to go through it in detail because you can have it. But I want to give you the concept of this. Your at bat, in my opinion, starts well before you ever walk out onto the dirt, to get in the hole. There's a lot of information you can start to gather and get focused well before that. So I like to think of the funnel of focus is a wide focus up here and a very narrowed focus at the bottom of the funnel, right? Wide focus, the concept there would be, how are you feeling? How can you improve or replicate your last at bat? Like, maybe you had a great last at bat. So how can I replicate that? Or I had not a good at bat. So what do I need to do to improve that? And then it's just kind of your wide angle of focus on trying to figure out what your next approach is going to be. Then that could be literally you on the bench. That could be you hitting off a tee. If your team hits off a tee in the game, like and behind the dugout, that wide funnel of focus needs to happen somewhere. Then you take it to the medium focus. So maybe that could be in this situation, we're talking really about 4 hitters here. So the medium would be the person that is not out of the dugout yet, but they're getting ready to go on deck. So they're at the fence, they're at the door of the fence, they have their helmet on, and they're really focused on the game and what might happen in the game that would affect them as a hitter. So, you guys can read through this and go through this, but, thinking about game situations, whether you're going to be possibly asked to bunt, whether you're going to be in an RBI situation, this is good information to put together before you ever step out onto the dirt and you're in the dugout and you're prepared to hit. Your helmet is on, you're focused. So you've narrowed your focus a little bit here. Then it goes into a even more narrow focus when you step out on the dirt and you're in the circle on deck. Now you're thinking about, working on your timing. Maybe you're focused on where your heart rate and your nerves are, trying to calm with breathing, trying to get your heart rate down. You're just focused on things that are very directly related to the game at that time. You're trying to control your breathing, working on, again, timing, working on quick positive thoughts because you're getting ready to go up and hit. And you're trying to figure out what your game plan is most likely going to be at this point. Then from there, when it's your turn to hit, you're going to be at the narrowest focus at that point, because now you're up to in the box. You're thinking about executing whatever plan you had. Again, you're breathing, you're executing a lot of the stuff while you're in the box, and you're very narrowed in your focus. That's what I mean by this mental mechanics is start wide, get small, and have that same process every time you hit. Try to get away from just being random and, oh, where's my bat? Where's my helmet? Oh, hey, you're up next. Oh, okay, I'm gonna go get my helmet. And the next thing you know, I'm on the dirt. Next thing you know, I'm in the box. And I really haven't even thought about anything, you know? Try to avoid putting yourself in those situations because that's not setting you up to be successful. So this is a good document to kind of read over when you have a chance to get some ideas on. Basically, the concept is start wide with your focus and then narrow it down to the pitch to pitch focus. Any questions on that before we get into actual adjustments you can make on certain kind of pitches?
JB,
do you have any?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you have any specific strategies to calm down or be in a specific mindset while you're up at the plate?
Yes. Okay. So breathing, right? Controlling your breathing is huge. Breathing will stabilize your heart rate patterns, and they won't fluctuate. Typically, when we're nervous or we have a lot of anxiety, our heart rate is kind of all over the place. It's got a very, like, if you could see a heart rate graph, it would be very jaggedy and very kind of all over the place. When you're calm and you're breathing and you're chilled, let's say you're just sitting, you're reading a book or something, then your heart rate pattern is a much more fluid, consistent, repeatable pattern. And that puts your mind in its optimal place to perform. So a breathing technique that athletes can use is to breathe through the nose and to use everything out of the belly. So literally inflate your belly like a balloon and breathe in, and then squeeze the balloon to breathe out all through your nose. Slow and with intent. Just that breath, those breathing techniques alone can sometimes stabilize your heart rate pattern a little bit. And when your heart rate pattern starts to stabilize, then your brain doesn't feel like it's so all over the place and your nerves don't feel like they're so crazy. There's lots of books that you guys can read. I would definitely invest in trying to find mental training books, books on breathing for athletes. There's a lot of information out there to help you with that. That's just a really basic thing that I know a lot of high level athletes do use is that particular breathing technique. That was a great question. What else? Josh, did you have something?
JB, on your previous slide, and you touched on this slide as well, you kind of mentioned, some of to working on their awareness and, ideas of have a plan before you get in the box. But, how much do you put into the players needing to watch their teammates at bats and identifying what the pitcher's giving their teammates early in the count, and, how that kind of, eases and kind of builds confidence in the box, kind of going in there with a game plan as to what the pitcher's been showing their teammates?
Yeah, I think it's super important. I think, for multiple reasons. I think anything that you guys can do as players to engage in the game, and of course, we all want the high energy and the cheering, and there is certainly room for that in an excitable team. But there's also room to be laser focused on what this kind of comes into that funnel of focus. You have to find a time in the dugout where you are studying the pitcher. I'm going to see if I can pull up real quick, guys. I'm going to pull up a chart that I like to use that kind of touches exactly on what Josh was just saying. I think by keeping up with a chart like this, you put yourself in a position to get some of that information, Josh, that you were just talking about. So give me 1 second right here. We'll take about a 1 or 2 minute break while I find this chart that I can pull up and give you a sense of how I think you could build in some of those strategies right into your dugout. So y'all give me a second. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to share a different screen here. Okay, y'all should be able to see this. Okay, so this right here is a chart that helps you offensively get some information from the game, okay? I'm going to start up here at the top. This is the quality plate appearance chart. And basically, we are charting our quality plate appearances. That's just another name for quab or quality at bat, okay? You guys as a team or Josh can decide what a quality at bat is or quality plate appearance. You could change this. But for an example, quality plate appearances are my examples are here. If a player goes up and has a quality plate appearance, we're going to put a check. Okay. And then for non-quality plate appearances, we're going to put a minus down here. So what we hope to see eventually is a bunch of checks that go across here. Let's say we had 10 quality plate appearances and we had 5 non-quality. So you could just put an X here, however you want to mark it. But what this top part of the box does is it starts to give us a sense of how we're performing against this pitcher in terms of creating quality at bats. If we as a hitter, look at this chart and see that we're struggling for quality at bats, then we have to start really understanding what this pitcher is doing to keep us off balance. Okay. Now I want to slide down to this bottom one. This one's super important. First pitch strikes and first pitch balls. So if we can get a sense of how the pitcher is commanding the zone early in the count, that can help us start to work our strategy and our approach. So for an example down here, let's say we're up against the pitcher. She throws a first pitch strike. I put a little X here or a dot, whatever. Then the next batter comes up, then that batter goes through their at bat, they finish up. Next batter comes up. She throws it in the zone and they foul it up. Well, foul a ball. That's a first pitch strike. So now I get some tendencies here on the pitcher's early command. So as a hitter, let's say I'm the number 9 hitter on the team. Okay, well, I've got 8 hitters worth of information here to build my plan. So when I come up here, if I see that 6 of the 8 hitters had first pitch strikes, then I'm going to be looked to be aggressive early in the count. On the flip side, if 6 of the 8 hitters have first pitch balls, then I'm going to be a little bit more conservative, and maybe I'm going to either look to a strike or I'm at least going to be very picky early in the count. So these two things can kind of give us, okay, how much success are we having? And then the pitcher's tendencies. And then this middle box is the outcome from a hitter's perspective. So what I like to do here is I'll have whoever's charting will chart this stuff. Let's say the first hitter comes up and they, let's just say, line drive it to right field. And I could tell it was a low and away pitch. Then I'm going to put a dot right here, just showing that the ball was put in play. Right? Let's say the next kid comes up, she gets 2 strikes on her, and she swings on a rise ball up here for a strikeout. So I'm going to put a K right here. Next kid comes up on the last pitch, the kid throws it in the dirt and she walks. Then I'm going to put a W down here to show that the outcome was a walk and it was a bad pitch. Okay, so again, let's fast forward to 10 to 15 at-bats. I'm going to start to have populated this to start understanding where we're having success. Because if I start seeing that there's a lot of Ks up in these quadrants, then I know that we're not being disciplined on the rise ball. So as a hitter, again, I'm coming back around. I look to see the pitcher tendencies on how much they command the zone early. I look to see where our success is and having quality plate appearances. This might dictate how aggressive I'm going to be. And then I'm looking right here to see what outcomes are happening. Maybe we're driving the heck out of the ball and we're getting a ton of line drives on the outside of the plate right here. That's all good information for me to start to put into my plan, right? So I think going back to what you were saying, Josh, just having a chart like this starts to build some softball hitting IQ, along with giving some very tangible type stuff that a hitter can use to formulate their game plan.
Perfect. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to sharing the other screen. Okay, any other questions on just I'm just fast forwarding here. Yeah. Any other questions on kind of the mental stuff before we kind of get into very exact type adjustments you can make? Any more questions about like process oriented stuff or anything like that? Okay. So let's talk about adjustments in games at the plate. This might be the meat and potatoes. This is like the drill section, if you will. But I think everything else we talked about is super important, right? I mean, taking your hitting serious, ladies, is going to give you the advantage of being the best hitter you can be, being your own best hitting coach, really trying to dig into the art of being a great hitter. That's what's going to be expected of you if you're going to play at an elite level. So the sooner you start to develop your own strategies to take hitting and adjustments and game planning more serious, the closer you're going to be to being the best hitter you can be. So let's talk about in-game adjustments. So you got to have a plan, right? You hear that all the time. So how do we develop plans? Well, we develop plans a lot based upon the type of pitcher that we're pitching or we're going up against, right? So I'm going to ask you guys a question, all right? And I need one of the players or two of the players to answer this, okay? If we're in a situation and we see that the pitcher is a rise ball pitcher, right? They're a rise ball pitcher. What's the first thing we need to know about a rise ball pitcher, do y'all think? There's no right or wrong here. I just want to see what y'all's minds kind of gravitate towards. So ladies, somebody needs to speak up and tell me, if you know you got a rise ball pitcher, what's one of the first things you might consider information-wise trying to figure out? Or just give me strategies against a rise ball pitcher.
Maybe to where her ball's breaking, if it's breaking earlier up against the plate, or if it's if it's like breaking further back.
Okay, so if you have that information, how would that affect your or change your plan?
So you could scoot forward or back in the box, so that way you could catch the ball breaking earlier.
Okay, so kind of you're kind of in the place that I'm going to go with this. But here's what I think. This is kind of relates to what you're talking about, but here's how I want to frame this. The first thing you need to know in a rise ball pitcher, first of all, what is a rise ball pitcher typically trying to do to a hitter? Somebody answer that question for me. What is their goal typically with a rise ball pitcher? What are they trying to do to a hitter?
Have the hitter pop up.
Yes, or swing where? Out of the zone, right? Rise ball pitchers typically are trying to get a hitter to swing out of the zone, okay? So what we have to establish first on a rise ball pitcher is, can they throw a low rise ball for a strike? At y'all's level, 14U, 90% of rise ball, maybe 95, maybe 99% of rise ball pitchers that have a strong rise ball do not throw it for a strike. So when you get to the college levels, then you're going to get into kids who might take Barnhill from Florida a couple years ago. She had 3-level rise balls, and she can throw a rise ball for a called strike. But in a situation where most pitchers do not get called strike rise balls, that's really important information to know. Because if we know that their rise ball is a sucker pitch, it's a sucker pitch, then what strategy do we want to take in that situation? Would we want to be up in the box, and why? Or would we want to be back in the box, or why? Or would you want to be in the middle? So any player, take a shot at that. There's no right or wrong right here. What do you think?
I
I
think
would say
that. Oh, I
I'd
think that
say
I would
for
want to be in the back of the box so you can see the ball longer.
And
You
who is
see
this?
it whenever
Who's talking?
Deanna,
Okay, great. So you're
and you
saying
could
get in the
see,
back of the
yeah,
box so you can see it longer?
yeah, like you
And
could see whenever it breaks.
okay, so why do you think it might be an advantage to see it longer?
So you have longer to decide whether you want to swing or not.
Right. And would you want to swing at it?
No, not if
No.
it's out of the
No,
zone.
because we just determined that this rise ball that this pitcher throws is a sucker pitch. It's
Mhm.
not a called strike pitch. So we never want to swing at a rise ball for a pitcher that doesn't throw it in the zone. Now, there could be an exception, full count, and she misses the rise ball, like she doesn't actually get it up in the zone enough. But if a pitcher is not getting a called strike rise ball, we're doing everything we can to not swing at it. Does that make sense? So if we're doing that, then we would never want to be thinking, oh, let's get in the front of the box and catch it before it breaks. Because if your mindset is get in the front of the box and catch it before it breaks, what you're really saying is, I'm going to go ahead and hit her rise ball. But if her rise ball is not a strike, then we shouldn't necessarily be strategizing to try to hit it. So I hope that makes sense. If they can throw a rise ball for a strike, or she misses the rise ball and leaves it in the zone, then being in the front of the box could be a strategy that might work. Because yes, it would allow you to get the barrel to the ball before it's any higher than it has to be. So, but those are the kinds of things you have to think about is for the pitcher, you know, what is her best pitch? What does she throw and how does she throw it? So moving to the next one, curveball. What do we need to know on a curveball? What's one of the first things we need to know? Somebody take a stab at that. Curveball pitcher. What do we need to know?
curve stay inside.
Say that again.
Curveball stay inside.
What do you mean?
Like the curve, like with a righty, with like a righty pitcher, the curve will usually curve inside. If I'm right.
Okay. So I okay, kind of following you with there. I like that. What else would be important to know about a curveball pitcher, do y'all think? Okay, so let me throw this out at you. Let's go right back to what we just talked about. What was important about the rise ball pitcher? What do we need to know?
If she's throwing it for a strike.
Boom. Okay. Curveball pitchers, a lot of times will get you to sucker and swing outside, and then nobody can get their barrel to the ball. But nobody has the patience to see if the umpire is willing to call it for a strike. So we have to establish if they're calling, if she's getting that curveball as a called strike or not. Again, this is assuming that the curveball is one of her best pitches. If the kid's got a crappy curveball and you can knock the snot out of it, then this stuff doesn't matter so much. What we're really trying to find out here is the stuff that the pitcher's good at and how we're going to counter that, right? So we have to know if that curveball is being called for a strike. Somebody has to be willing to be disciplined enough to not swing at the curveball. So for an example, if I'm hitter number 4 and my first 3 batters in front of me are swinging and missing on outside pitches on a curveball, I need to be disciplined enough to figure out if the umpire is going to call that. So I've got to not swing at it early in the count, right? Now, here's the tricky part. Okay, she can throw it for a strike. She's painting it, and we're still missing it. We're still getting struck out. We're still struggling on this nasty curveball that if we look at it, we will get rung up. So now what do we do? So basically, if you look at my little chart here, I have curveball. What do we need to know? Well, we need to know if she can throw it for a strike. But now what are our options based on what we know? Well, we know she can throw it for a strike. And we know it's a good pitch because we're getting schooled on it. So what are our options based upon what we know? What does somebody feel like an option might be? What do y'all think? What could an option be at that point? We know she's got a great curveball and we know she can throw it for a strike and we know we're struggling. What can we do?
maybe adjust to hit, to not wrap it around, like hit to right field.
Yes. Okay. So what do you mean by hit it to right field? Like, what does that mean to you?
Maybe to like be just a little bit later in your timing or whatever and hit it and like just.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. So kind of thinking opposite field. I think thinking opposite field on a curveball is a good strategy. So I like that. Let me throw this out at you guys. If we have a pitcher who's got a deadly curveball, we know she can throw it for a strike and ring us up, and we know she's making us miss, then we have to figure out how to hit it. So we have a couple of things we can think about here. We can get into sitting and hunting pitches, and we can get into where we're at in the box. So for an example, if we know we have to hit it, where's going to be our best place to hit the curveball?
The front of the box.
In the front, right? If we know we're going to have to hit the curveball, then we need to get in the front of the box. The further we are in the back, the more break it's going to have, the harder it's going to be to hit it. Does that make sense? Now, let's go back to that fourth hitter who's trying to figure out if she can get the curveball called for a strike or not, because the first three hitters just whiffed at it. We don't even know. If I'm trying to figure out if she can get a curveball called for a strike, where would I want to be at in the box?
The front of the box so you can catch it before it breaks.
Okay, but yes, if we're trying to hit it. But if I'm trying to get information because I don't know if she can throw it for a strike yet, or I don't know if the umpire is going to give her the call, because we haven't established it as a team yet, because my first three hitters, they just whacked away at curveballs and couldn't hit them. So we don't know yet if the umpire is going to help her or not. If I'm going to be disciplined and not swing at that curveball, because again, we're going back to assuming that we don't know if she can throw it for a consistent strike with the umpire. Where would I want to try to get that information at? Front of the box or back of the box?
The back of the back so you can see it break.
And the umpire can see it break,
And
right?
yeah.
So again, the pitcher is eating us up on a curveball. We know we don't really want to have to deal with that if we don't have to, because she's kicking our butt with it. We're trying to establish whether we're going to have to swing at it or not. We'd rather not swing at it. So now we go to the back of the box and we force her to throw it for a strike. Because if she's got a nasty curveball, it might be breaking too much by the time it passes us in the back of the box. Therefore, the umpire doesn't call it. So I'm the four hitter. I go up, I load up in the back of the box because I've already told myself I'm not going to swing at that curveball early in the zone or early in the pitch count because she's dusting everybody with it. It's obviously a dirty pitch. And we're just swinging. And I don't know if we're swinging in the zone or out of the zone. I need to figure it out. So I'm not going to swing at her curveball early. That's too good of a pitch. I'm going to look for something else to hit early in the count. But in the meantime, I got to figure out if she can throw the curveball for a strike. So I'm going to go to the back of the box, because guess what's going to happen if she tries to throw the curveball and you don't swing at it in the back of the box and the umpire calls a ball? What do you think she's going to do next?
throw a different pitch.
She's going to throw a different pitch. You, in your hitting plan as the four hitter, your hitting plan is to do what? Not hit the curveball, but to do what? Hit what? A different pitch, right? So you're trying to force her to throw you a different pitch. So now let's say she throws you a screwball. Okay? You're gonna swing and try to knock the snot out of that screwball, because it's not the pitch that you're trying to avoid. It's another pitch, right? So that's what I mean by trying to establish whether she can throw it for a strike. Now, if we do establish she throws it for a strike, because that same four hitter comes up, loads up in the back of the box, stays disciplined, boom, she throws a curveball on the outside, umpire says strike. Well, then we know, okay, we may have to deal with hitting her curveball. Now, if I'm the fifth hitter, I'm thinking, I'm going to go to the front of the box because I'm going to have to deal with the curveball. And I'm going to have to be ready to hit it. Okay. So that's how I make my adjustment in that situation. Now, what if she has a lot of heat and she is humming it and she's got a nasty curveball? When you get in the front of the box, what does it make it harder to do? Hit what? Velocity, right? So you're going to have to figure out in the front of the box off of a nasty, fast curveball success pitcher if you're going to be able to catch up to it. So this is where you might come into your two-strike approach or changing your mechanical elements a little bit. And we're going to get to that in another slide. But what I'm saying is it's a cat and mouse game. You're looking at the pitcher, you're trying to figure out what she does well, and how are you going to counter that with your tools, right? So that's what your planning is all about with your hitting adjustments, is what is she good at? How am I going to counter it? All right. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through every one of these. You guys can, you're going to have these slides. You can continue to talk about them as a team. But I do want to get into most all of these. When it says, what do we need to know? We need to know if she can throw a first strike. That's true of a changeup. That's true of a drop ball. It's true of a rise ball. It's true of a curve ball. It's true of that. We need to know if her best pitch can be thrown as a strike, because then we can start to game plan. So let's take this into the next part of that. And this kind of just as a continuation. When we're game planning, we have to start to understand what it means to sit pitches or hunt pitches. And I don't mean guess pitches. Okay. That's a different strategy, like guessing what she's going to throw. I don't think that's a great strategy because you have no control over it. So I don't think guessing what she can throw is good, but certainly trying to pick up her tendencies to change your plan is a good idea. But rather than guessing what she's going to throw, figure out what you want to hit. So hunting or sitting pitches essentially is the same thing in this context. Basically, what that means is we're only going to swing at a certain type of pitch that we have verified that we know we need to swing at, but she is kicking our butt. Okay, perfect example. You face a changeup pitcher, right? Now, what is our typical strategy against a great changeup pitcher? We have no balls and no strikes. What do most coaches tell us to do in that situation? No strikes, no balls. She's got a nasty changeup. What are we supposed to do with that first pitch if it's a changeup?
With the first,
Take it, right? That's a very typical strategy. And it's not necessarily a bad strategy, especially early on in the game. Because the problem with swinging in a first pitch strike changeup is that changeups aren't a high percentage ball that you can drive. You can drive one, but it's just not high percentage. So why would you give up your first strike trying to hit a pitch that's not a high percentage ball that you can drive? So looking at first pitch changeups is a very common strategy, and it makes a lot of sense in most scenarios. However, what you got to be careful with is, what if a kid can throw a changeup for a strike anytime she wants? You ever face those pitchers that, like, in 5 pitches, they throw 3 changeups? You know what I'm talking about? You do meet up with those pitchers that are changeup pitchers. Well, there's the perfect example. If she can throw a changeup for a called strike, and she throws half or more than half in your at-bats, then you may want to change your strategy to hitting her changeup. And don't worry about the fastball. So now you're trying to time up her changeup, because the thing that makes changeups hard is not hitting them, because changeups are easier to hit than fastballs. The problem is it's the difference in speed that you're getting between pitches that messes you up. The changeup messes you up because it gets you on your front foot and you're too late on the fastball. So what you could do in a strategy with a pitcher who's amazing with their changeup is just let go of the fastball. Let her throw that and don't swing at it. Time up the changeup, because you're going to get it half or more than half of the time, and you're ready to knock the snot out of it when you get it. So in that situation, if you're going to sit change or hunt change, and you're in your second at bat of the game, you may not want to look at the first pitch changeup. You may want to go up there saying, I'm going to knock the snot out of her changeup. So that's an example of how you could hunt or sit for a certain pitch. And you could do that for outside pitches, for inside pitches, for changeups, for whatever. And then kind of a couple of other approaches to think about is how could we simplify our swing if we're swinging and missing a ton? So if a kid is striking out a lot of people, we just can't seem to get the barrel on the ball. We need a good 2-strike approach or a good simplified approach. A lot of times taking the stride out, learning how to take your stride out and hit is a really important skill, because it can be very helpful when you're just trying to pepper the ball or you're just trying to make contact. Take your moves out of your swing to simplify. And one of the first places you can do that is take your stride out of it and just hit from a non-stride position. That does not mean that that's your new way of hitting. It's an approach. It's a tool that you could use to try to figure out how to get the barrel on the ball. But you got to practice it. So when you're in hitting practice with your team or with your hitting coach or on your own, you got to practice swinging without taking your big stride, and think of it as an approach, not as your swing mechanics. That can be a good, powerful way to combat a swing and miss pitcher where nobody can seem to get the barrel to the ball. Figuring out how to simplify your timing mechanism, simplify your swing. The last concept I'll talk about on this, and then it's going to pretty much go to questions for the last few minutes, is understand leverage counts. Like, understand when you should live on the edge, when you should come out of your shoes, when you should just literally swing as hard as you can. Okay? That's an important concept and skill because you want to do damage, right? You want to, as a hitter, you want to do damage as much of the time as you can. That's not necessarily true for the slapper, the person who's trying to get on base, but for everybody else, you're trying to do damage. So when you get in a situation where you're on a 3-0 count and you have a green light from your coach, meaning you're not expected to take it, you can swing if you like it, that needs to be a daddy hack. That needs to be just coming out of your shoes, swinging for the fence, right? That could also happen in a 3-1 account. So understand when you're in a leverage count where you can afford to really swing big, right? Because you may not want to be swinging that big if you get to a 3-2 count. You certainly don't want to be swinging that big if you're a 1-ball and 2-strike count. Because if you're at a 1-ball, 2-strike count, you ain't getting anything great to hit with a good pitcher. So there's no reason to be coming out of your shoes. You should be focused more on trying to be a contact hitter. So understanding how to leverage and understanding your counts is I think, super important. Now, there could be a situation, because everything is in context, right? So there could be a situation where coming out of your shoes on a full count is a good idea. Can anybody think about a situation where that might be a good idea to come out of your shoes on a full count pitch? Anybody? That's kind of a weird thought, so I get it. Okay, well, let me present this to you. Okay, here's your context. You're in a game. You're playing a very easy pitcher. She ain't fooling nobody. You guys are up 11-0. Everybody's knocking the snot out of the ball. Everybody's having fun. Everybody wants to hit. Well, then I'm not scared of a 3-2 pitch. I'm gonna maybe leverage that one and try to do damage, because I'm not intimidated at all in that moment, because I have a ton of confidence that I'm going to knock the snot out of this pitcher. So that might be a situation that even though you have 2 strikes, you swing big, right? But that's a context situation. That's not the same context as you're in a tight game. Your team needs 2 runs. You're facing a talented pitcher. That's a different story altogether. So all these things come with context of what the game situation is. So questions on this part. I think these last 2 slides are the meat and potatoes of what we just talked about. We've got just a few minutes for questions. I actually have another Zoom tonight, believe it or not. It'll be my 3rd one. But any questions about this part of it, the in-game approaches and adjustments?
JB, do y'all implement like any type of like you mentioned pepper, like any kind of like a pepper call? You know, if a lot of players are striking out or struggling getting a barrel on the ball, where you just everyone's going up there going wide, no stride, or even just choking up.
100%. So 100%. So that sometimes comes up to the coach, right? So if we're in a situation where, I'll just go back to the changeup, we're getting dusted on a changeup, then we're going to change. We're not being successful, right? Then as a team, we're going to start sitting changeup. So as a team, we're going to start hunting the changeup, right? That is going to be our plan. We're going to be swinging at the changeups. And everybody is going to do it. So that would be a team plan, Josh. So that would be you guys getting in your huddle and saying, okay, guys, this changeup pitcher is kicking our butt. We can't seem to get anything going. We can't take the changeup because the umpire is ringing us up. We're mishitting the changeup. And the reason why we're probably mishitting the changeup is because we're trying to deal with the fastball too. And it's very difficult to hit a fastball and a changeup in sequence. Like that's a difficult adjustment against a good pitcher. So as a team comes in, hey guys, we're struggling. This is a changeup pitcher. We're sitting change. That's our hitting philosophy. Everybody goes up there and you're swinging at changeups. That's what you're swinging at. You're not swinging at the fastball. You're swinging at the changeup. So that could be that. That could be the peppered 2-strike approach. That can be any of these approaches. If you feel like the whole team needs it, you can put the whole team on it. Or you can put certain players on it. Or you can put the whole team on it, but put it in context. Okay, so here it is in context. We have a changeup pitcher. She's just killing everybody, but she's not killing Sally Sue in the 4-hole. Sally Sue has her number and she's 2 for 2. Well, then I may not put Sally Sue on the hunt, the setup, the change, right? I may not put her on the team game plan. I may tell Sally Sue, do what you want to do. You're already seeing the ball like crazy, but everybody else is on this. So as a coach, I think you can put your whole team on it. You can put certain players on it, or you can go bat to bat and put somebody on it, but sometimes hitting is contagious. And when you're not hitting, it's contagious. And sometimes you just have to try a different approach to get something to happen. And you have to practice this stuff. Like in your hitting practices, Josh, you have to practice sitting change. You got to practice hunting the outside pitch or the 2-strike approach where you're peppering, where you non-stride, you choke up a little bit, thinking opposite field, right? You got to practice that. That has to be a part of the hitting routine because otherwise nobody's going to be comfortable in the game trying it. Any other questions you guys can think of? I'm not going to get into we'll save this for another day, mechanical stuff and data, because it's already past, like I said, 9. Again, this slide deck is in y'all's deal. Y'all can download it yourself. You can kind of start to go through it and try to make more sense of what I've talked to you guys about. I know this is a ton of information. Don't feel like you have to change your whole world of hitting in one day. Just take a nugget of this, take one little thing of this, try to implement it, and start to understand that on a high level, you're going to have to start taking your game planning and your game approaches more serious if you want to be the best hitter you can be. Just like you do your hitting lessons, you got to take this stuff serious if you want to be the best hitter you can be. So start game planning, start trying to put these approaches, start having a funnel of focus, and start to take your art of hitting to the next level. So that's what I got.
JB, can I go back real quick on the 2-strike approach just for them? You think you had 3 points there that you listed, them just picking out one of those and kind of implementing that first. You think maybe thinking work opposite, initially until they get like a wide no stride or a choke up swing established? You think something like that is easier to do now?
I think oppo is your easiest one because they already know that. Like they already understand the concept. You guys as hitters understand what hitting oppo is. I think when you have 2 strikes, you know, you're trying to figure out how to not be too early. So by thinking oppo, you know, you can still do something, you know, with any type of adjustment, but that's a good 2-strike approach, is just think opposite field. Another simplification though is non-stride, but like you said, Josh, you know, if y'all are playing this weekend, you don't want to go in and make somebody non-stride without this being a big part of your, you know, practice regimen or having everybody start to work on it. But having said that, you can always think of a 2-strike approach as choking up and thinking opposite field. Like that's not a terribly difficult adjustment to try to make. Anything else? Happy to do a part 2 of this. Maybe you guys start to try to implement some things. Start to, you know, try to grab 1 or 2 of these concepts. Maybe we do a part 2 at some point. You guys let me know how it's going. Or let me know what makes sense or doesn't make sense. You know.
JB, I think you hit a lot of great points tonight. You know, with the team coming together and us having some new faces, we're, you know, we've had a few games and scrimmages under our belt. I think, you know, being aware in the dugout, you know, picking up pitcher tendencies, having conversations with their teammates as they come from the field and from the batter's box. Some of that stuff is what we've been struggling with early. And then we've hopped in a couple of elite games against some teams that are elite class, and they saw some different pitching that some of us haven't seen before. And so the plate approaches and the identifying whether or not the pitcher is able to throw those pitches for strikes is big for the players right now.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and if we, like I said, there was a lot of information in this, but let's boil it down to this. We got to figure out how to make good decisions, right? We got to figure out if we are making good decisions, and we got to figure out how to at least start to work on good approaches and good game planning and strategies versus the other pitchers, the pitchers that we're facing. You know, we got to start somewhere and then, you know, get deeper into it as we go. You know, so, but, you know, sounds like you already, you know, Josh, already have your mind around some of the things that you guys need to be focused on. I think, girls, what I'll leave you with is this stuff is important. Try to embrace thinking of hitting at a whole new level. And I guarantee it'll start to pay off for you. You know, as a hitter, starting to learn how to do some of this stuff. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I have another Zoom coming up, so I'm going to have to get. But I'm glad that we're able to do this. I hope there's, again, something that you can take away from this. I, you know, look forward to hopefully finding a time to get to watch you guys play. I mean, there's not really that many things that I enjoy more on the softball field than seeing Blaze teams, like seeing different Blaze teams. Like, I love that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, my life's not set up to where I have a lot of time to do that. I wish I did, because I could literally go to a tournament and go from game to game watching different Blaze teams and be as happy as a bug. But my schedule doesn't typically allow that. But when I am in a situation where I can watch games, I like to do that. So hopefully I can see you guys at a tournament, come by, say hello, watch some of your at-bats. Another big thing we didn't touch on, but I would advise videoing, you know, if you guys are using Game Changer or even better, AGL or both, videoing every at-bat and having a way to go and look at your at-bats and post to try to help determine what things went right and what things went wrong.
Perfect. We appreciate your time tonight, JB. Really do.
Absolutely. appreciate you guys being a part of the Blaze, and I'm always around if anybody needs anything. Matter of fact, real quick, I'm gonna put my phone number in here. So ladies, parents, whoever, you guys are welcome to reach out to me and ask me anything that you need, whether it has to do with this hitting stuff or whether it has to do with Blaze in general or whether it has to do with recruiting, doesn't matter. I'm here for anything that you guys need Blaze related, so don't hesitate to reach out. All right. Outside of that, you guys have a great rest of your night, and hope to talk to y'all again soon. All right. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
You got
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
got
you.
it. Bye, everybody.